Today we're looking into whether this is actually bad for you or is it totally fine. While researching, there are a lot of conflicting research studies and views about it. Some saying there is no effect while others saying it is harmful, and we'll see how over time the views have changed as more studies and research papers kept getting published. Also the fact that there is a pattern on why some studies magically didn't find anything while others clearly did. Most people don't think handling a receipt is harmful. They rarely think about it at all, but the reality is way dangerous, as we will see from the studies. And more interestingly, it might shock you how some of these people handle them every day. A receipt is made out of thermal papers. If you look at it, it looks harmless. We associate a receipt with normal papers. No one thinks of it as any different than normal paper. Like what happens when you eat a normal paper? Nothing. So a receipt should also do the same thing, right? Wrong. A thermal paper is made from a chemical called bisphenol A, in short BPA. BPA is a chemical that is found in many things like plastic, food cans, bottles, thermal papers, and so on and so forth. But it was not intended to use like that. Back in 1891, Russian scientist by the name Alexander P. Dionin first synthesized BPA for laboratory use. But by the 1930s, researchers discovered it acted as a synthetic estrogen that mimics the natural hormone in the human body. 2 decades later, manufacturers began to use it to make plastics, specifically polycarbonate, and nobody cared what it might do to a human body. Why would they? Because it made profits and there was no rule to prevent them. Since then, plastic companies in 1940s created loads of them because it is cheap, it does not corrode the inside of a can. They went crazy and nobody noticed any significant difference at all. As of 2012, 10 million pounds of the material were produced worldwide with a total estimate of 2013 market cap value of $13 billion. And the market is expected to expand by 5% every year annually. Every day, the manufacture of sales and BPA brings in tens of millions of dollars. BPA gets cleared from a body from few hours to 2 to 3 days. But studies have found. Now that we know that it is present in our body, before getting to the effect of thermal paper, let's look what does the research says for BPA. There are lots of research done on animals. Several studies on rats and mice have found that exposure to BPA before giving birth can lead to abnormalities in mammary tissue development, also in the increase in the growth of tumors and abnormal carcinogenic cells. Studies assume that the toxic impact is proportional to the amount ingested. But Patricia Hunt, a geneticist at Washington State University, said that they don't play by the rules. An estrogen chemical can induce cell growth at low levels but inhibit at the higher levels. Dr. Saba Liran, Yale School of Medicine physician and scientist, and whose studies shows that BPA reduces the number of synapses in monkey brains. Deborah Kuras from the University of Calgary says that brain development in zebrafish is similar to that of humans but much easier to track. So when the fishes were dosed in BPS with BPS in similar conditions, at very low doses they have activity, and then when you increase the dose it drops in activity. Then at higher doses it has activity again. In another study by Hong Sheng Wang, an associate professor of the University of Cincinnati, found that both BPA and BPS causes heart arrhythmia in rats. Center of Environmental Health is now suing 90 US retailers. BPS have been linked to triple negative breast cancer as well as prostate cancer. The studies funded by the industry cannot be trusted. In 2013, for example, the American Chemistry Council spent more than $11 million on lobbying expenses, according to the Center of Responsive Politics. One 2008 investigation by Milwaukee Journal Sentinel found that a government report claiming that bisphenol A was safe was written largely by the plastic industry and others with a financial stake in the controversial claim. One 2006 analysis by Frederick von Saal, researcher of the product at the University of Missouri Columbia, and Wade Wilson showed that 11 out of 11 industry-funded studies found BPA has no significant action, while 109 out of 119 studies that has no industry funding did find effects on BPA. So if it says no problem, check who funded them. Mr. John Roast Hill, chairman of the North American Metal Packaging Alliance, think it is so funny that he feeds his 5 children. Wow, great. Applause. Okay, by 2015, we had this extensive research done in the animals with significant terrible outcomes. But that was not enough for these people to acknowledge the significant threat in humans. In 2011 study published in Environmental Health Perspective found that almost all of 455 commercially available plastics that were tested leached estrogenic chemicals. It led to a bitter battle between Eastman Chemical Co. and the study's author George Bittner, professor of neurobiology at the University of Texas at Austin and the founder of Certichem and Plastipure, 2 companies designated to test and discover non-estrogenic plastics. Bittner lost because the tests were not done in a petri dish rather than in a live animal. The thing about thermal paper is that it gets absorbed in the skin through contact with greasy hands and gets in your bloodstream. Now let's take a look at the research on thermal paper itself and how people handle them. This is by far the most interesting paper I have read on this topic. They unveiled some assumptions made by the EFSA on the handling and showed that the reality of the usage is much different. In a study at the University of Massachusetts Tanning Facility, researchers tracked 698 college students and found that only 11% of the participants were consistent with EFSA model usage of 51.1 nanogram per kg per day, but EFSA model limit at that time was 59 nanogram per kg per day. More than 100 studies found correlation between BPA exposures and increased risk of adverse health outcomes like cardiovascular disease, obesity, diabetes, ADHD, male sexual dysfunction. There are two handling patterns observed here. 98% hold normally with few fingers with an average of 10 to 14 seconds. That's it. 2% are some crazy people out there who does stupid shit like rolling it and using it as a straw, blotting lipstick, using it as a napkin to remove food, blot grease from pizza. Oh my god, why? One guy tried to stop bleeding in his hand. I get it. They all think of it as normal paper. A single thermal receipt may contain 250 to 100 times more BPA than the lining of a canned food. Cashiers can absorb up to 71 microgram per day of BPA from receipts alone. Hold that number in your head as I will explain what they found a decade later. It's also not same for everyone as EFSA guidelines took 70 kg as average body weight. For that weight, we'll see significantly worse effects and at higher risk. Into 2015, EFSA wrote that children chewing paper receipts is assumed to occur only sporadically so that no chronic exposure results. Well, if adults are putting in their mouth, then we can only imagine how much a kid is likely going to do that. Now, this study was done in June 2017 and the limit of EFSA was 50 microgram per kg per body weight. Since then, they reduced it to 4 microgram per kg per body weight, which means the number was already crossed for these people in the studies. This was also at 2015 and was considered as safe. Now, if you fast forward and look at the latest report at 2023, what does it say? That it is a health risk. In fact, the daily tolerable intake went from 50 microgram per kg per body weight to nanogram per kg per body weight, which is 20,000 lower than the previous amount. Clearly, a lot of studies have shown overwhelmingly negative effects in this 10 years. How many times do you look at a current research and look at its conclusion and think it's going to be like that forever and never look at it again, when in reality it might change over time with new research in the future? Now you might be asking, okay, I get it, it is harmful, poisonous, absolutely wreaked havoc on animals, right? But do you have any proof that it's happening to humans as well? Yes, we have a lot of studies showing lowering sperm count, drop in egg quality, obesity, metabolic problems in children, diabetes too, and many more issues that is directly linked with these chemicals. And obviously what we see, as we see when the research is lagging, and if a span of a decade EFSA could reduce the safe intake by 20,000, then we can rest assured that in the next 10 years we will see something else. Like, it's upon us individuals to take care of us, right? We already know that plastic is bad. Now also add thermal paper to the list and don't fall into the 2% people category of handling the thermal paper. Switzerland banned both BPA and BPS in any products all over the country. EU banned BPA, first banned BPA in food packaging in 2020, only to be quickly changed its form with BPS as a loophole only to be as harmful or even more harmful in later studies. And now they banned that too for food. In thermal paper, only BPA is banned and BPS is legally allowed today. In US, there is no nationwide ban, but states are acting individually here, where in most of the world, it is totally fine to use it. There is no active ban in any other places. There is always a catch and mouse game between what the current research is showing, the ban, and changing the product accordingly by the industry. Deborah Kuras says that there are many types of bisphenols out there. So part of the public's responsibility is making sure that manufacturers don't just go from BPA to BPS to BPF or whatever the next one is. And for always, thanks for watching.